So I haven't done anything out of the mailbag in a while. That's what I think I called it. And nowadays it's not even mail, it's email, right? But I remember back, someone had sent me an email talking about the podcast, and she's a regular listener, and she made a comment about, why don't you tell your story at some point about how you went from certified residential to certified general. So let's have that conversation, and maybe it will provide some information to those out there that are at a certified residential level who might want to upgrade to a certified general, because that was I was you right back at one point in time. So that's what this podcast is going to be about, a little bit of what I did and what I thought I might end up having to do to get there. And then I'll give you some ideas of maybe how you can get some experience. And this will tide over even to a trainee. If you're a trainee and you're struggling, I know right now, business has slowed down a little bit. And I spoke to someone the other day, said, hey, I got my trainee license. Yay, now I just need my supervisor to get busy again so I can help and log some hours. And we're going to talk about maybe a non-traditional assignment, something like that, right? I think I've referred to it as a dummy appraisal or a sample appraisal. I heard Barry Phillips the other day call it a mock appraisal. And we'll look at the AQB protocol. I think they're talking about non-traditional appraisal, so that's probably a best term. But we'll dive into that. So come on back and let's have a conversation about it. Hi, this is Bryan Reynolds. You're listening to the Appraisal Update Podcast, brought to you as always by the great folks over at Appraiser eLearning. You need some education? Jump over to appraiserelearning.com and we'll take very, very good care of you. Before we get started, I want to say happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Thanksgiving is this week, and I hope that you're in an environment where you can be around friends and family and loved ones and enjoy that. And by the way, if you've listened to my podcast for a little while, I had a bologna sandwich for one Thanksgiving day and kind of feeling a little blue and sorry for myself. And that's just not productive, right? Get up and shake it off and dust yourself off and make the best of that day. I would ask that we remember one another, and we be thankful that we're thankful for those relationships that we've had along the way. And maybe reach out to someone you haven't talked to for a while. The holidays can be an environment where you're happy and you're having a great time and you're merry. And yet for some folks, it can be a very depressing environment, right? Maybe you're having some struggles, or maybe you're not where you want to be in some of those relationships, both family and friends. And it gets a little depressing, right? For some folks. And hopefully none of you listening fall into that category. But if you do, know that someone thinks about you, someone that cares about you, someone loves you, and remember that. And if you're not experiencing that, please take a moment to think of someone and make a phone call or drop them a card, shoot them a text. Call them. That's the best thing to do. FaceTime them. Do something like that. I know I get excited when my daughter does that, and she always complains, Dad, you never answer when I call you. And that's not true. I do, but we're all busy folks, and I got to swing by last night and have dinner with her. So that was a great time for me. It's just about an hour and a half. That's all the time we took, but it was great to spend that little bit of time together and catch up and see her smiling face. So that always makes me feel good. All right, let's dive into it. So I'm a certified general appraiser both in Kentucky and Tennessee, have been for a number of years. I started in Chicago, Illinois, as a trainee. Became licensed, and I was a licensed level appraiser for the whole time I was in Tennessee. And then I moved back to Kentucky, and I became a Certified Residential Appraiser in the Commonwealth of Kentucky and maintained that credential for a long time. But I wanted more. I have a thirst for knowledge. I wanted to have the ability to appraise anything if I had that opportunity. Now, that doesn't mean I will appraise anything, right? You've got to be competent, or USPAP gives you that flexibility to get competent along the way. So check that out or listen to a podcast. We've talked about that. 3 things you got to do if you want to take an assignment that you're not competent to do. But USPAP gives you that flexibility, which is really kind of incredible. And it's nice that they do that. I was in a class just yesterday, and I said, if you just had a regular conversation, said, can you take an assignment that you have no idea what you're doing? Why, yes, I can. Send it over. And there's a little more that you have to do than that, but gosh, you wouldn't think that that's the case. No, you can't take it. Common sense. You got to take something you don't know how to do it. But USPAP does give you that flexibility. There's some things you got to do, and you got to get competent. But it gives you that flexibility. So don't be so ready to say, I don't do that type of property and hang up. It may be a huge opportunity for you. It may be a learning experience. And now you know how to do something that you didn't know before, and you can continue to take those types of assignments. So it may just be opportunity knocking at your door. Be sure you answer the door before you send that opportunity away. You might decide you want to just embrace that opportunity. So I was a certified residential appraiser for quite some time. I got on the, back in those days, it was the FHA fee panel. There wasn't a lender selection roster back in those days. And everything was going along pretty well. And I was busy. I just wanted to have the ability to do other things. And I really struggled with that because it's a similar scenario when someone makes the wonderful decision to become an appraiser. What's their number one challenge? Well, their number one challenge is finding a supervisor, right? Finding someone that they can work with and gain the experience and log that experience log. And that's been the biggest challenge for most people entering the profession. Well, guess what? That also is probably the biggest challenge with a certified residential appraiser wanting to go up to the highest level of certified general. Can't find anybody that's willing to train me. I can't find anyone in which I can secure that experience. And I'll tell you what I was going to do. I was going to get very creative. I made the decision that I wanted to take that path and I wanted to become a certified general. And yes, I might have to make some sacrifices in order to do that. But that's okay. I'm willing to sacrifice. I'm willing to suck it up and do what I've got to do, at least temporary, to get ultimately where I want to be. I mean, I don't want to make all these sacrifices for nothing. There's got to be a reward at the end of the finish line, right? But I'll run the long road if at the end I am rewarded for that. So I was getting creative. I said, maybe I go out of town. I don't want to go to Evansville, Indiana. I mean, it's across the river. Those are Hoosiers. I'm just kidding, all my Indiana friends. But I thought maybe I could go over to Evansville. Maybe I could knock on some doors and shake some trees and say, look, I don't want to have an appraisal office over here. I'm not going to be your competitor. And I'll sign a piece of paper that says that. I want the experience, right? I want to do what you do back home. And so I'll come over here and work for free or for a very low fee. I'll do whatever you want me to do. I'll do your grunt work, right? Just let me get to hang out and gain some experience. That's what I was going to do. Luckily, kind of at the last minute, an opportunity fell in place for me with Mr. George Cox, and I have to thank you, Mr. Cox. He's not with us anymore. He passed away a few years ago, and I miss him. My buddy Clay Wells, and I worked for George for quite some time. Clay was his lead guy, so Clay did work for him full time. I just worked on and off for him. And Clay and I used to complain a lot. I can't tell you how many times George would call up and say, "Hey, I need you at the cabin." You see, what he ended up doing is he bought 30 acres of land in a little county called Ohio County. It's in Hartford. He had a one-bedroom cabin on 30 acres, really in the middle of nowhere. Now, how ironic is this? I hunt right down the street from there now. A good buddy of mine has a farm, and that's where I hunt and fish. But back then I didn't because I didn't know Danny at that time. And it's just ironic that I drive by George's old place many times in order to get to where I hunt and fish. It's very cool. But George bought a little cabin out in the middle of nowhere, and that was kind of his retreat. He would go out there. Had horrible internet, almost non-existent, horrible cell service. But he set up a little computer out there, and it was a one-bedroom cabin. He set the living room up. The living room kitchen was a kind of an open concept cabin. Had one bedroom, one bathroom, and that was it. But it had a really nice wood front porch. Now he'd call up, "Bryan, come on out here." And I'd go out there, and he'd be sitting on the porch, maybe have a gun on his lap or something. We'd shoot a little. Might even have a Knob Creek, and then we'd talk shop. And Clay and I would say, we've heard the same stories 100 times. But I will tell you this: I didn't know how lucky I was. I didn't know how fortunate I was. Mr. Cox was probably the number one litigating appraiser throughout the Commonwealth, probably throughout the region, but certainly throughout Kentucky. And I will say I learned more on the front porch of that cabin in the middle of the woods than any class I've ever taken. He was a wealth of knowledge when it comes to the world of appraising. And Clay and I both were very, very fortunate to have the opportunity to work with Mr. Cox. So I'm very thankful for that, and we'll never forget that. But yeah, it's a big challenge trying to find someone to help. Now, one of the competency issues, if you don't have competency, is you got to get competent. So you got to disclose to your client, hey, I'm not competent to do it. You've got to take all steps necessary to become competent, and then finally disclose that in the report, right? That's the three things you got to do if you want to take an assignment that you're not competent to do. So let's talk about acquiring that competency. What does that mean? Take a class, take multiple classes, read a book, associate with someone that has that experience. And you could do that. Maybe you could hire them. Or maybe you could refer the case to them. Hey, I've got a job here. I'll refer the case to you if you let me hang out and gain some experience. And I'll never forget that. I tried to do that with George one time. I had been appraising several farms through George for the Kentucky Department of Revenue. We'd done several farms. And I got a call from an attorney. I don't know how he got my name, but an attorney from Florida called. He said, "Bryan, I'd like to hire you. I've heard some good things about you. And my dad's got a farm up there along the river, it's river bottoms, and we'd like to hire you to do it." And I said, "Okay, great. Been doing a lot of farms. That's right up my alley. I've probably got really good sales. And tell me what you got. Where is it exactly? How many acres? I'll do some research and look at the soil classifications. We'll talk about how many acres you have to crops, and how many acres to woods, how many acres you have to scrub, roads, ditches, sinkholes, whatever it might be." And he said, "Okay, yeah, we'll work all that out. I assume you want an engagement. Yeah, I'll prepare an engagement letter." Now, guys, I like to prepare the engagement letter. And that's a whole other conversation we need to have. But if I prepare the engagement letter, I have control of it. And you better believe I'm going to write that engagement letter that leans toward me, In other words, if you decide to sue me, it's going to take place where I live, not where you live. I like to be in control of that. If I have to go to court, I want to be paid. Whether you ask me to go to court or anybody on the planet brings me to court on this case, you're paying me, right? I like to have those in there. He said, yeah, shoot me over an engagement letter. And he said, my dad owns part of the property. I said, whoa, what? He said, yeah, he's one of the owners, and we want to know what his ownership interest is worth. I'm like, oh, boy. So this is what's called a partial interest assignment. He said, yeah. I said, well, I need to stop right there. I have a little bit of experience on that, but I don't feel comfortable doing it. If it was fee simple, I'd be all over it. I'd take care of it. But since there's multiple owners and you just want to know what their part is worth, but I know the appraiser for the job. George will probably let me make a phone call and see if George will take it. He might let me help out. I appreciate you trying to send it to me, but I'm just not comfortable doing that. And he said, Mr. Reynolds, I want to tell you this. He said, I really appreciate the fact that you're sharing that with me instead of just taking the assignment and trying to do your best with it. He said, I appreciate you being upfront and telling me that. So I called Cox. I said, George, I got an assignment here. It's an attorney out of Florida. It's a partial interest assignment, but it's a farm. He said, yeah, we'll do it. I'm like, great. Well, George, if I can tag along, help out a little bit. He said, well, you're going to do it. I said, oh, perfect. I said, because I'm excited because now I'm going to learn something. This is an opportunity for me to gain experience in something that I'm lacking a little experience in. So I'm super excited. And he said, yeah. He said, now, Bryan, you're going to do all the work. I said, yes, George. I kind of assumed that. He said, now, Bryan, I'm going to keep all the money. I said, George, that doesn't surprise me, because that was George. I said, that doesn't surprise me, but that's okay because I'm going to gain the experience. I'm just really, really excited about the opportunity to work with you on this. And yeah. So I hung up. I called the attorney back. I said, George will take the assignment. I get to help, and we'll prepare you an engagement letter and get that over to you. He said, perfect. Somewhere along the way, George said, I probably need to talk to that attorney. I said, well, George, he's your client. Sure. So I connected the two of them. George talked to the attorney, convinced him that we should just do a fee simple estate and let the partners work out their differences and figure it out from there. I could have done that. I could have done that. So I did all the work. George made all the money, and I didn't learn anything. Now, wait a minute. I did learn something, but it was nothing to do with partial interest estates, right? I had a ball with George. I learned a lot. And again, I'm very thankful for that opportunity, as I know Clay is. Clay does a lot of litigation work now, and he gained a tremendous amount of experience from George. So thank you, Mr. Cox, and thanks for that opportunity. I'm very, very fortunate. So if you're a residential appraiser and you're thinking about, hey, I'd like to maybe take baby steps and see if I could move up to a certified general, I would encourage you to seek others out and see if you could collaborate. You could do some work with them. Maybe you call them up and say, hey, I get calls every once in a while, and I can't do the commercial work, but I would be happy to refer it over to you. Will you pay me a referral fee? Now, can you do that? Say yes. You can do that. You can pay a referral fee. USPAP allows that. And you can accept a referral fee. USPAP allows you that. The only thing USPAP says is I've got to disclose if I've paid something in order to procure an assignment. It doesn't say I can't do it. It says I simply have to disclose it. Okay? So we know you can do that now. Quit letting that money slip through your fingers. I would be happy to pay a referral fee. You call me up and say, hey, I've got a commercial assignment. You want to do it? Yeah, I'll pay you a referral fee. I might not pay you till I get paid, but I would be happy to pay a referral fee for that, right? Now, some people in your town might say, no, because I'm the only commercial appraiser here, and I know they're eventually going to get around and call me anyway. So I'm not going to. So it's a case by case. Maybe some will, maybe some won't. But here's another opportunity. Maybe you decide to hire a certified general appraiser. And we've offered this opportunity in Tennessee a little bit. So if you're a certified residential appraiser, and let's say you want to add a commercial division, right? Seek out a CG or call my office and say, hey, we'd like to engage you. You're going to be my commercial appraiser on a case by case when we get these assignments. And I'll pay you, or I'll pay you a salary, or I'll pay you a one-off, or however you want to, however you folks, organize that relationship. But by the time we're done, you're going to be able to have the tools you need to set for the exam to become a certified general appraiser. And I may want a little money on into the future off of that, right? You're making a sacrifice. You're making a sacrifice now to get that reward at the finish line. So it's something to think about. There's another opportunity for you. Hear that? Now, opportunity's knocking. Are you going to answer the door or not? Here's another opportunity for you. If you're a trainee, you might like this opportunity as well. So I started the podcast talking about a dummy appraisal or a mock appraisal. Let's talk about that. And I want to show you where we can get some information on that. So if you're watching this, you can follow along with me. If you're not watching, I'll try and let you know how we're getting there. Or you can come over to our YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and search Appraiser eLearning, and you'll find our videos there, right? Because we started videotaping these. But let me move over and show you this. So if you go to the Appraisal Foundation website, which is what I have up on the screen right now, right? It's appraisalfoundation.org. And there's some tabs up here at the top, and at the very top, the second tab says Standards and Qualifications, all right? So I'm going to click on that. A little drop-down menu appears, and the second option there says Qualification Criteria. That's what I'm looking for. And if I move over to Real Property Criteria, now, just a reminder, most of you are real property appraisers. Your license might even say real estate appraiser. You might refer to yourself as a real estate appraiser. Some states will use real estate and real property synonymously, but they don't really mean the same. Real estate is the dirt and anything thereon. The building, the barn, the fence, right? Real property are the rights inherent of owning a piece of real estate. So if we want to get really technical about it, are you a real estate appraiser or you're a real property appraiser? You're a real property appraiser. And again, some states will use that term synonymously. A lot of practitioners will use that synonymously. I'm not going to beat you up if you say I'm a real estate appraiser. That's fine. You may have a business card that says real estate appraiser. I'm not going to beat you up over that. It's okay. But if we want to get highly technical, you're really a real property appraiser. And that's why this says Real Property Criteria. So let's click on that. And you see a little guide here, all right? Now, this is the guide we want. I'm going to click this little button here that will bring up the guide on my screen. And for my listeners, you're frustrated because you're driving down the road and you're like, what? Click here. What are you clicking on, Bryan? So I clicked on a little tab that said Real Property Appraiser Qualification Criteria, all right? So here we are in the guide. It's 74 pages, and we're certainly not going to go to all 74 pages. But if I come right here to the table of contents, right, you can see this says criteria applicable to all appraiser classifications. So it doesn't matter which classifications. This is criteria applicable to all appraiser classifications. And I'm going to come down here to page 12. It says generic experience criteria. All right, so I'm going to click on that. I'm actually going to scroll down. It's going to take me over to page 13. And let me make this a little bit bigger, so maybe for those of you that are watching this on YouTube, you can see it a little bit better over my head, because Hal's got this rigged up that you see my face no matter what. And I want you to look at item D. So I'm on page 13 of the Real Property Appraiser Qualification Criteria, effective January 1st, 2022. So this is the most recent protocol. Look what item D says. There need not be a client in a traditional sense. For example, a client hiring an appraiser for a business purpose. In order for an appraisal to qualify for experience, let me read that again without the parentheses. There need not be a client in the traditional sense in order for the appraisal to qualify for experience. Experience gained for work without a traditional client can meet any portion of the total experience requirement. So it used to be that you could only claim 50% of your experience this way. Now it can be all of it. You can gain 100% of your experience via a non-traditional appraisal. There need not be a client in the traditional sense. Okay, I don't have a client. So I'm going to appraise this house over here. I see a house over here. I'm going to appraise it. I don't even have a client. Therefore, there's no assignment. I'm doing this as a sample appraisal. I'm doing this for the purpose of gaining experience. Now, you're not going to be paid because you don't have a client, but you're being paid in other ways. You're making that sacrifice today for the reward or the prize later, right? And if you're willing to work hard and you're willing to sacrifice a little bit, there's a pot of gold at the end of that finish line. We have a hard time making sacrifices these days. We want what we want, and by gosh, we want it now. We don't want to have to wait. There's an old saying that says, be patient or you might become a patient, right? So sometimes we need to be a little patient. Good things will come, right? So here's an opportunity. Let's go back to your certified appraiser, and you want to become not just certified residential, but certified general. You hire someone that can come help you. So let's say you hire me to come down and we start appraising some apartment complexes. And maybe you already have experience doing 2, 3, and 4 units, but now we step it up a notch. We start doing 6 units and 8 units and maybe 12 units, maybe a 40 unit. We're not getting into 100 or 400 units, but the process is the same. There's just more of them. So you and I get together and we collaborate and we appraise several of these over the next several months. And now you get it. You feel pretty good. I mean, you may have to call me once in a while. You may collaborate with another certified general appraiser, but you feel pretty good about analyzing income, developing your opinion of market rent, figuring out how to extract cap rates, understanding what replacement reserves are, understanding allowable expenses versus what is not allowable as an expense, and analyzing income. You got the IRV formula inside and out. Really ought to be called the IRP formula, in my opinion, IRP instead of IRV. Nothing would prevent you from starting to appraise other apartment complexes without a client, without an assignment. You're doing it to gain experience credit. Guys, this is a huge opportunity. Now, you do need to check with your state and make sure your state's going to allow you to use the 100% because they may or may not. You've got to make sure that you're in line with your state rules and requirements. But if they do let you, this is a huge opportunity. It wouldn't be as hard for you to gain the experience necessary to set for the Certified General exam as you might think that it would be. And for my trainees out there, listen, you've been a trainee for a year, for 2 years. You're appraising houses all the time, but things have slowed down. Nothing would prevent you from driving around a particular subdivision. I'm going to appraise this house today, and tomorrow I'm going to appraise the one next door to it. And guess what I'm going to do the third day? I'm going to appraise the third house. I'm just going to drive up and down the street, and I'm going to do drive-by appraisals on every house in this subdivision without a client. Therefore, there's no assignment, and it's just for experience credit. It's a huge opportunity. Seize the opportunity that the AQB has gifted you. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're doing well. I hope you have a great Thanksgiving. I hope you sit back and reflect on what you're thankful for, because I know you're thankful for a few things. Even if you're stubborn and you're not going to admit it, dig down deep, you know you're thankful for something. Until next time, please be safe. Enjoy Thanksgiving with your family. Enjoy Thanksgiving by yourself. If you're in an environment where, hey, I'm going to miss it this year, I can't get home for Thanksgiving, do something for you and enjoy that time by yourself. Until next time, be safe, happy appraising, happy Thanksgiving. You've been listening to the Appraisal Update Podcast. I'm Bryan Reynolds, your host. Until next time, happy appraising.
The Appraisal Update Podcast is brought to you by Appraiser eLearning.